All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wet Center webinar series. So this is a first for us, and this will be our first one. Today, we will be covering going online. So building a reputable online reputation, along with a quality website as the front and face of your company for customers going into this new era of digital interaction with our customers due to what's been going on in our world. Alexis here has put together a presentation, so we will run through that first, have her make her comments and go through her presentations, and we will hold all the questions until the end. If you have a question you'd like to save for the end, feel free to put it in chat. We can always go back to the slide or whatever point of reference you need for your question. Alexis will do a good job of answering your questions at the end. Make sure to stay tuned to the upcoming webinars that we will be hosting, including the next one should be focusing on actually doing webinars themselves and having a quality presentation, quality audio, and making sure to still recreate that personal touch as much as possible that was once possible before through online methods. And then following that, we'll be doing interviews with industry in the water, energy, and ag space, along with covering subjects in sales and marketing. So you won't want to miss those. Make sure to just check your email every week. We'll send you out with some information. Continue to register and give us your feedback as well on areas we can improve and what other subjects you would like to see covered. All right, with that said, we will welcome Alexis out, and Alexis, go ahead and take us away.
All righty, good morning, everyone. So this presentation, I know we had reserved until about 1 p.m. for the webinar today. But as much as I get excited about websites, I don't think that you'll get just as excited as I do. However, I am totally fine with being proven wrong, but we'll take about 30 minutes to go over kind of a brief idea in regards to, how are you setting yourself up to kind of make an impression online? And I believe that websites in particular allow for you to make an impression no matter where you are, because oftentimes people do a Google search or they're clicking the link to your website through your email. So we're starting kind of with the foundation of your digital marketing presence or your brand presence online, which is your website. So let's just move forward here. A little bit about myself, just so you can kind of get an idea. I'm not going to read this whole paragraph to you, but I recently graduated from California State University, Fresno, go Dogs. I have a bachelor's of science in agricultural communications, public relations, and I've worked on a myriad of different digital media channels, such as websites, social medias. My primary focus areas are in social media strategy, brand and web development, graphic design, social media advertising, influencer marketing, and media relations. So really anything along those lines, I'm your go-to gal. So if you have any questions outside of what we go over today, I do have contact information at the end of this presentation that you can pull from. So moving on, we're going to kick it off with, due to COVID-19, in-person contact has decreased dramatically. And although most of the time we do most of our marketing in person, we are almost forced to move into a more digital space for the time being. So since you're reaching out digitally, the people you're reaching out to, whether it's for sales or even just regular connections and networking, will do their research digitally too. So the prompt that I have throughout this entire presentation is, how is your main point of contact, your website, holding up to what you're selling? Now, I know a few of you might already have a website that you have pretty built up and you're feeling confident. Maybe you're looking for a few additional items that could beef up maybe your presence on your website, or maybe you're a little new and your website, you are kind of looking for a little bit of help in building it even stronger. Or you have no website at all and you're looking on a fresh place to start, and we'll kind of go over all three of those concepts today. So before we do anything website related, it's important that your brand it's important for your brand to develop a strategy and keep the messaging strong and cohesive. What I mean by brand strategy, and I have it hyperlinked here, so when we share all of our wonderful additional links for you guys to use and reference as you kind of navigate the website world, The brand strategy is more so your mission statement, your slogan, your taglines. You're looking at, what colors are my brand? Do we have a really great logo? You're kind of looking at an overall perception of how you are marketing yourself to the world, in addition to how's your internal branding going? How are your employees or your sales team taking a look at how your brand functions and how are they telling the world? So before you really step into the website space, it's important to take a step back. And especially now, since we're home a lot more often, we're able to kind of evaluate, okay, who is our target audience? Who do we want to reach? Who do we not want to reach? And kind of evaluating from there, because that will help a bunch when you're creating your website. So people may not buy right now, but your impressions matter long term. And what we mean by that is that impressions help make that really important sale that, of course, you try to make 24/7, 365 days a year, right? So those impressions, whether if it's just they're browsing your website, they're going to think about it, but there's cool things like the Facebook Pixel, which I know we'll discuss in later webinars, which allow for, your website or your products to show up while they go to maybe a social media app, which is really cool. But again, those impressions, even though it may seem tedious, do matter long term. So with that being said, invest what you're asking from others to the best degree. Now, I understand budgeting right now can be kind of difficult for some, but also might be easier for others. So if you're looking at kind of developing your website internally, I have tools listed in this presentation for that. But if you also have the ability to outsource your website to, say, a PR agency or a web development agency, they're there to help for that as well, which is really great. So either or, it's important to know at least a few of the basics if you are deciding to do the website development internally. The number one step is to purchase your domain, and I know there are plenty of places to purchase a domain. However, I'm sure you've heard the term before. GoDaddy is a very popular domain, I guess you could say, where you can purchase a domain. It's also very popular for website design as well, and I know the GoDaddy team, if you're looking to kind of have somebody else manage and develop your website, GoDaddy does have team members available for those kinds of things. So obviously the first step is going to be purchasing your domain. The second step, if you're doing it internally and don't want to outsource, is creating a seamless, powerful website that gives your brand or products defined looks. Now, there's a ton of user-friendly programs out there. I listed a few here. I'm going to show you kind of the back end of how Wix works, as I use that one personally, but there are others like WordPress, Weebly, Squarespace, and most, if not all times, they have pre-made templates that you can edit. So it's not you could start from HTML coding scratch if you're familiar, but if you're looking for something that's plug and chug and you just want to insert and kind of have a fresh new look, people like Wix, WordPress, and Weebly have those kinds of tools available. Now, kind of going off of the impressions that help make that sale, your job right now is to long tail market. And of course, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but it's important to post frequently with valuable content on your platforms that you have and are available to you. So that could be social media, that could be your website, you have a blog that maybe you haven't posted on in a while, SEO or search engine optimization, and knowing what your competitors are doing and saying will also help you stay a step ahead. Now, I know it sounds funny, but just take a look into what your competitors are doing. It's okay to see what words they're using, what kind of design that they're kind of going towards. It's important to kind of see what your competitors are doing and then move towards making kind of, I guess you could say, a newly reimagined look, so you're always kind of staying in the game. But for now, let's focus on what all of those platforms lead back to, which is your website. Ooh, sorry, guys. I had to get a drink of water there really quickly. So if your website is outdated and you're not feeling very confident and you want to kind of give it a new look, again, consider those following platforms that I had mentioned to get started. So kind of the beginner steps in building a website. After you've kind of purchased your domain and you're looking to kind of having a site builder like Wix develop or kind of work with the website development on the back end, I know it sounds crazy, but Google how to transfer your site domain, whether you purchased it from GoDaddy or another site that your domain's already with, from wherever you purchased it, right, to your site builder. So I'm going to go ahead and click this example really, really quickly. So of course I use Wix because that's the platform that I'm most familiar with. However, I know Weebly and Squarespace also have kind of a step-by-step in transferring your domain to the server, which is Wix, right? So the other issue, or not issue, I'm sorry. So the other way that they do it is usually you can actually call the team as well, so they can help you with the step-by-step process. So if following online is difficult, their sales team is there for that as well. I know for me, it feels great to talk to somebody in person, but if you're kind of like, I want to do it on my own, that works too. The next one is edit your website how you want to using the pre-designed templates. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a kind of a background look as to, what it looks like, say, after you've got your domain and now you're kind of working on it. So right now, just to give you a little bit of a back end look. So this is our website currently. And one of the tasks that I have with the Water, Energy, and Technology Center is to kind of reimagine the website, right? So even though we don't necessarily deal directly with sales, it's just important to stay, I guess you could say, up to the times and reimagining your brand at all times. It's never really healthy long term to stick with what you know for forever. The more you can implement and incorporate new things, the more customers you'll reach ultimately. So say you wanted, and usually with Wix, they'll give you, when you're log into the program and just begin, you can select templates. This is a template that I have been working off of that we have been using quite consistently. So for us, we've kind of tried to reimagine moving from our square design from before to having a piano design here. So there's a ton of different plugins. You can edit your menus. I don't want to go too in depth and perhaps overwhelm you, but there's a ton for navigation. Maybe you want something a little more interactive. Maybe you want to start a blog and reimagine that. They also have apps, which theoretically you would insert by dragging and dropping, or you could view. Perhaps in this case, what might be the most applicable to you would be having maybe an online store. So maybe you want to go a little more in depth about your products. You would maybe view apps here and start adding those into your website, which is really, really cool. Let me go ahead and hop back here just so we don't get too off par. Wix is the most user-friendly, of course, as I just showed you, but maybe you're a little bit more familiar with HTML and you have your website pretty handled and you're only looking to do maybe minor edits. Perhaps WordPress, I couldn't find those words, haha. WordPress or Squarespace might be more for you. There are millions of options. You do not have to use Wix. Maybe you want to use Weebly. But I encourage you to take a look and consider these parties when you are redesigning your website. As some, for example, WordPress is more content driven and Wix is more informational driven. So if you're looking at coming from an educational standpoint, maybe Wix is maybe more your fit, whereas WordPress is content. So if you want to show off all of your amazing products or your ideas, WordPress would be the one that you would go with. So what you need on your website. Now I know this can be kind of personalized. So what you may see as a need may not be a need to somebody else. But I know at minimum, you'll need to include your contact information, your geographic address. And what I mean by geographic address is that maybe you only service a few areas as opposed to nationwide, or maybe you do service nationwide and that's not on your website. The other thing by geographic address, or the other thing that I mean by using a geographic address, is to have your physical address, so wherever your home office is, please make sure to list that as well. Logos, of course, I know it sounds silly to repeat it, but sometimes we're not able to register what brand we're looking at if the logo is not included. A mission or an about us, I kind of combine those together because oftentimes what they can kind of combine together. Products, a few high resolution images. I know that sounds crazy, but you'll see what I'm talking about here in a few minutes. I'm going to show you a quick example of what not to do on a website. And if you can, a video of your team and the work that they do. And the reason why I included that was because oftentimes there are so many brands that reach out to you or email you, or you see a bunch of websites every day. Most people are using Google constantly, right? Having a video or even images where you talk about the work that your team does is really important because it adds a personal touch to your brand instead of someone feeling like they're just being sold to. They want to know, who am I going to be possibly working with in the future or talking to? So adding a little bit of that personal touch is really important. And to kind of piggyback off of that, using testimonials is incredibly, incredibly important. So if you have, say, a customer that's already are in love with your product and wants to share more or share it with the world, capitalize off of that. Include them on your website, post them on social media if you have those platforms. The more that you champion your kind of network that's already 100% invested in you, the bigger your network is going to grow. They're going to see that, oh, well, so and so is using my product and loves it. Why wouldn't somebody else, right? And I kind of added a little side portion. So if you already have those things on your website and you're looking to kind of implement something a little bit new or fresh, I suggested, and this is up to you and whether it is applicable to your brand, but a blog. I realized that that also adds an additional personal touch to your brand. So even if you're talking about an issue that you're solving, or say you had a really great interaction with a customer, and this is how after you install the product, they're able to, you're kind of sharing their story of how it's worked for them. In reality, a blog can be kind of stretched any kind of direction. And then live chat. I've noticed that over time, some people don't really prefer emailing. Sometimes that formality can make people a little nervous. So a live chat, although it is more informal than an email, may make more possible sales simply because it's informal, it's less pressure. They can ask a few questions and you're answering, even though you may not potentially get a sale, it will still lead to that long-term impression that will lead them back to your website. And then lastly, connecting social media profiles. That's another big one that I've noticed is people visit your website and they're trying to connect with you other ways to see what you're doing, and they're not able to do that. So if you haven't connected your social media profiles, I would highly encourage you to do so. So a little bit of design tips and tricks. Always make sure your website is not cluttered. You want a clean, easy to read website, easy to navigate. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes finding that menu bar can be kind of difficult, especially via mobile. And make sure that your website has no spelling mistakes or broken hyperlinks. And I always try to kind of bring it back to, okay, well, bringing a website is to an actual person. So think of it this way. If your website was going to an interview, how sharp do they look? Do they have all the information needed to land the job? In this case, sale. In reality, your website is a representation of you and your brand, and you want to be just as proud of it as if you were to walk away and have that be the lasting impression that you have, right? So to give you a little bit of an idea here, this is Yale's School of Arts webpage. And I know you're probably like, holy moly, right? So one of the things that I realize is that a lot of the times we get a website, we make sure that, it has all the information that we need on it. But sometimes we forget to kind of invest a little more energy in the presentation that is given. So of course you're thinking, oh my gosh, the Yale School of Art, I'm thinking of something that's going to be very prestige and clean and very proper. And I saw this and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? This background's very distracting. It's very hard to find the geographic address here. And another thing that I found was that there's no contact at the bottom of the page. They have their social profiles connected, but again, those are kind of hard to see on the back end. So this is just an example of maybe a website that's a little too cluttered. And I know that on this sidebar, it says it's an ongoing collaborative experiment in digital publishing and information sharing. So actually, Yale uses this as an example for what not to do. But if perhaps when you're comparing your website maybe to this one, maybe you're like, oh, well, I kind of like how they have this floating box here, but I don't know how I feel about the background. And that's what I kind of wanted to show you guys in regards to what to avoid, but also maybe you actually see something that you like here that you would want to implement somewhere else. Now, I know that's kind of far-fetched, but maybe the events calendar, you're like, oh, that's a really great idea. Those are the kinds of things that I would want you to kind of see here as possible. Okay, well, we don't have that on our website, so we want to go ahead and include it. Let me head back to the presentation here. Hang on one second. So a little bit of some helpful links. We will share these after the webinar as well. So how to buy a domain name if you're not sure how to do that, how to choose the best website builder, a keyword counter, which I think is really cool. We'll go ahead and click on this one. So a keyword counter, I know it sounds interesting. You're like, what do you mean by keyword? And oftentimes SEO, so search engine optimization, relies heavily on keywords that are used on websites. So say someone Googles, let's say, if they're looking for a cell phone, they're just putting in the word cell phone into their Google search, and Apple shows up, or Samsung, or I guess Nokia or BlackBerry. I know those are possibly outdated, but you get where I'm going, right? Apple and Samsung are using the word cell phone on their website a ton, right? So that's what I mean by keywords. So people are searching keywords, and then Google's search engine optimization will lead you to people who use those keywords the most on their website. So what you can do here is type in, we'll go ahead and put in the Wet Center really quickly, and they'll count the words, the keywords, the quantity. So I guess what they kind of separated this as is non-common and all keywords. So most of these are kind of, open-ended. They're like the thes and the tos, but I would say focus more on the non-common keywords. So for us, of course, we use water, energy, ag, market, and I know those are kind of juxtaposed phrases. They're kind of hanging out all by themselves, but theoretically what you would do, and again, it's not wrong to look what your competitors are using here. You would type in the HTTP web address, and then you would see what words they use the most, and perhaps consider inserting those on your website. That's pretty basic SEO. I don't want to go too in depth with it because it can get a little confusing and complicated. But just for a start, when you're putting things together for your website, choosing those words. Going back to having a good brand strategy, I also included this hyperlink in there as well. So again, kind of bringing up the target audience knowledge. Maybe it's time for you to take a step back while those in-person meetings are no longer available due to COVID. So kind of taking a step back and looking at your brand and overall brand and what your goal is perhaps for the rest of this year, going into next year. I loved point number 3, passion is observable. So if you want to bring hype around your brand, you need to have your fans and buyers passionate about your culture too. So again, going back to including what's important on your website, those testimonials, sharing blogs about their story, how they loved interacting with you, and they're really happy with the product as well. Those are all great ways to kind of bolster your brand and really develop your website and creating a voice for your brand as well. I do want to open it. I do want to share my contact information here as well. So you guys are more than welcome to email me any additional questions that you may have outside the webinar, or if you have any questions on perhaps SEO that we did not cover today. But to kind of keep the conversation going, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at any Q&As that you guys might have. All right. Hi, Dawn. Hold on one second while I give you. All right, Dawn, you should be able to ask me your question, but I'm all ears.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
can. Hello.
Hi. I've got this strange, I'm literally talking through a microphone.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
audio
hang
interface
on one second. Let me see if I can. Hello. Can you see me now? Is it a little more personal?
Yeah,
I'm not a floating voice.
All right. I've got thank you, Alex. Alexis, for this. It's been really. I've even taken notes, and I'm not working, and I hardly ever do that. So I've enjoyed it. But now I'm wondering is there, for a guy like me that's not all that savvy, there were some terms that you used, some acronyms and abbreviations. Could you just maybe steer me toward is there a website out there or someplace your knowledge of, a small book that just kind of gives some basics?
Sure. So
I don't
what
really know a
were
browser from a search,
yes. So
or a
what were
webinar.
some of the terms that had you confused? Maybe I could define a few of them here.
Well, like GoDaddy. I'm using WebPress and GoDaddy. And I didn't
Okay.
realize there was anywhere else besides GoDaddy that you could get a domain name. And they're really helpful. I like them. I'm happy with them, but why would I want to move? As you were talking.
So it sounds to me you're working with GoDaddy, who's your website provider, right? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the way that, and if you're happy with the service that you're getting and you're really loving your website and the way that it looks, I would suggest keeping what you have and adding to it. In reality, the best advice I can give is that if you're happy with your brand and the direction that it's going, adding more and amplifying kind of like the pride that you have with your business is really the best thing that you can do. Because again, that pride and that, I guess you could say, power, you being excited about your brand is really going to carry over to people who are viewing your brand. So with GoDaddy, I know that they work with WordPress. You said it was what program? It was GoDaddy, and what was
It was WordPress.
It was WordPress. Fabulous.
I hired a guy to do my WordPress stuff. I don't even begin to.
Perfect. So you should be able to either contact GoDaddy and be like, hey, there's a few things that I really love to add, or you could, I would assume you're able to log into your WordPress and edit yourself. If you're feeling a little worried about editing and you don't want to mess anything up, I would suggest you reach back out to the team that you're already working with, just because they're the most familiar with your website. And if you're really looking for a vision, GoDaddy's team's actually really good at, making sure that your vision is being implemented.
I won't monopolize you, but I do have another question.
No worries.
On the overall marketing, I am expanding into the Sacramento Valley now, and I do have kind of a void in between Sacramento and, say, Merced. It's not that I need to cover more. You know what I do. I do reporting. Yeah. But linking with other entities, say farm bureaus or things, how much value do you see in that?
You mean like reaching out to them, or?
Okay, let's say Tehama County Farm Bureau for some reason likes my stuff and I like them. And we decide I'm going to swap links with you. Is there a point where, is there a value that they put links to my site on their site, that type of thing, back and forth? Or is there money involved in that typically, or?
There could be. So that it sounds more so if, say, someone's really believes in your work and wants to kind of partner with you in a way, or maybe have like, okay, well, my hyperlink to the website is on your page and vice versa. So for me, I don't see partnerships as something that you would necessarily have to pay for. I think just having maybe their logo on their website with usually you can add their PNG, which is the transparent background to the website, saying like, oh, proudly partnered with, or proudly worked with. And then you could list all of the people that you've worked with, either that you want to and reaching out to them, or people that you already have. So, and that almost kind of steps your brand up immensely, because it shows that, you've worked with all these people. They love your work. You've done stories on them, stuff like that. That almost solidifies your professionalism, but also shows that, you're reaching out to multiple different people from different backgrounds. It shows that you're kind of diverse, as opposed to just having a few people perhaps on your website. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So long term, it might be beneficial for you to add people that you've worked with on your website. But if for payment, I don't think it could be something that you could charge for. However, that's just my personal opinion. If it's something that you see, they're making more money than you are, maybe you would want to revisit that and talk with them. But I just think having maybe a logo partnered with on your website does help a bunch, and it can lead to their website if they really want to see. But oftentimes when I see logos on website, I'm just like, oh, really cool. They work with these people, and I just go about my day. So it can kind of go both ways. You could have somebody going to someone else's website, which in theory you don't necessarily want, or they just see, they don't really think anything too much other than the fact that like, oh, they're partnering and working with a lot of people. That's really great because it just shows that they're reaching out and trying to work with as many people as they can. Does that kind of answer your question, Dawn?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Fabulous. Do we have any other questions before we finish up here? I'm looking at the Q&A and I'm like, what's going on? If you guys don't have any additional questions, you're more than welcome. I'll go ahead and put my email up very, very quickly. Oh, actually, is there a chat? Hang on. Okay. So just a reminder, you can chat in any questions that you have. I'm going to put up my email as well here very, very briefly, just so you guys can write it down if you have any additional questions. But oh, yes, hold on one second. Let's see here. Joseph, hang on one second while I get your mic on. Okay, Joseph, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question just so I can answer it as personally as I can.
Hello, Alexa.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. So just to follow up with Don's question. So if we wanted to be able to stream, let's say, his content as part of our blog or our information onto our website, what are the types of links that allow for that type of automatic feed so that I don't have to go in there and grab it and then move it over? Is there I've heard of like RSN feeds and things like that. So how does that work?
So you mean adding kind of a program into your website where you're able to like constantly have an updated blog feed? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
Okay. So what you can do, and so I can best help you. Who do you do your website through?
We go through GoDaddy as well.
Okay. So typically, I know for us, it's a plugin that we add on our end to kind of have a blog feed. So for here, it would be embedding a blog on your site to get subscribers. So those are people that would be adding to your email list. For adding, you mean adding content from another site or just copying and pasting it as your own content from another site?
Adding from another site that's automatic, so we don't have to always.
Gotcha. Okay, so what I would do, because that's getting the embed link HTML code from the one website to yours, I would almost contact a GoDaddy because they would be able to find, and I'm not a coding queen at all, I will admit that, but I would ask GoDaddy to see if they can embed that portion of the website, which I know that they can, through the coding on that website and transfer it into the coding on yours. So theoretically, they would be able to tap, say, the blog portion here on the website and then scroll down, and then it would be a little block here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so theoretically, every time, let's say, Dawn posted something, it would go under our blog of GSA activities.
I would assume so. So whenever it's updated on that website, it should transfer over to your website.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would email and ask their support team because GoDaddy is really good at the coding aspect and pulling that the code, the physical code, and then embedding it into yours. So it doesn't ruin your, if you have your own blog, it doesn't kind of juxtapose it on the website. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, cool. I'm seeing a couple of more questions, I think. Am I going crazy? I could be. I'm taking a look at the chat here. Ahmad, any tricks on optimizing SEO? Let me go ahead because I do want to talk to you, Ahmad. You're not just a floating chat. Let's see if we can get you into the discussion here. So you should be able to unmute yourself and we can have a little bit of a conversation. But optimizing SEO, that honestly, that could be its own little webinar because it can get very, very difficult, but also very open-ended in a way. So for optimizing SEO, for a starting point, if you're looking at optimizing it with your current website, if you have no edits, would be to look at your keywords. What are you using versus what are your competitors using? How often are you using those keywords? Because SEO and Google are BFFs. And if someone's just looking at, just a simple ag tech as their keyword Google search, perhaps if using that on your website is really important. Now, I'm not saying pull every single keyword relevant to your industry either, because that can get kind of confusing, and a lot of the terminology within our industry can kind of be overwhelming as well to someone who maybe is new or isn't as familiar with the terminology. But for optimizing, let me pull a few more links, either from Wix or from, I know Forbes has done a few articles on SEO. And for our follow-up email after the webinar, I'll include some more tips on how to optimize. But I think starting fresh with optimizing is taking a look at those keywords would be super huge, because oftentimes we get caught up in our own internal terminology and we forget about what people are searching for and looking for. So that would be a start. Let's take a look here. Does that answer your question, Ahmad? Are you able to?
Kind of. It pretty much says it's a big puddle of things that Google controls, and nobody knows exactly what to do with it.
Yes. And I know that we'll be talking about sales and advertising in our webinar series future, but doing ads on Google as well. So Google Analytics and their ads program is really great. You're able to target certain areas, demographics, cities, but using those kinds of terminologies in the ad description, those keywords are also helping your SEO as well. And what's great about most of these platforms like Wix and GoDaddy, and if they use WordPress, most of them, or at least through Wix, they help you set up getting found on Google, and they also have marketing and SEO assistance as well. So if you have questions or you're looking to improve, I would see whoever your host is, and oftentimes they provide a ton of help for you guys on SEO too.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Ooh, I think I have another chat here. Ooh, hang on. No, my screen stopped sharing. Nice. Hang on one second, guys. Just a minor technical difficulty while I get the chat open. Do we have any additional questions? It looks like I answered just about all of them, but I could be wrong.
I have a chat. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You were talking about analytics. What are you actually looking for in Google Analytics? What should I be?
For Google, I would say
Or MailChimp. MailChimp's easier. I think
MailChimp, yes. So what's really great about the MailChimp, and I'm bringing myself back here. So with MailChimp, and I know that that's more of an email marketing effort. So unfortunately,
so they don't overlap?
They can, correct. They can overlap, but let me think. So
we can stay on topic. What about Google then?
So for when you're looking at, I mean, and this is just me personally. I know there's a ton of insights that they give you when, say, you run an ad, the ad completes and it tells you they give you all the crazy bar charts and a ton of different numbers. But what I really look at is how many people went to my website, how many impressions did I get? So impressions are just how many people saw my ad, interacted with my ad. It's kind of an overall reach, which takes me into the next. So the reach and the impressions kind of go hand in hand. They're like BFFs. But most of the time, those three are huge. So how many people clicked and interacted with the advertisement that I did on Google? What was my impression? How many people saw it? How many people interacted with it? And overall reach is how many times it maybe popped up on somebody's regular Google search engine without being prompted, or they're not actually looking for you just yet. Does that make sense?
I understand that, but I mean, what am I looking at? What helps me make decisions, good decisions?
So say you run an ad and your impressions are at 1,000 and your goal was to get 500 impressions. My take after looking at the ad after it's completed is to capitalize, okay, I did something right with this ad. Let's run it again in 6 months, because I'm already kind of on people's minds if I made 1,000 impressions, and then do the exact same ad in 6 months. Now, say you had an ad and you only got 2 impressions and your goal was to get 500 impressions on those ads, then you would go back to the drawing board. Okay, was it the image that I included with the ad? Was it the words that I used? Was it maybe the area that I targeted that wasn't beneficial to me? So you mentioned that you were kind of trying to reach the North Sacramento area, correct?
Yes.
So maybe you would consider running an ad targeting the areas in between all the way to Sacramento and not focusing on the Central Valley. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're reaching a new audience, because with Google, they ask you what areas do you want to target? And typically they do geographic. So it would be simple as like Fresno, Madera, Visalia, and you're able to kind of pinpoint those on a map. It's pretty user friendly with Google Ads, but those would be the things that I would look for if you're trying to reach a certain amount of people. Keep that number in mind and revisit it often with your ads, because as much as people's shopping habits change, so will your advertisements. So just kind of trying to reach a higher and higher reach and impression each time with those ads is key. Because even if they're not, say, subscribing, you're still on the back of their mind as they're navigating other things. They'll be like, oh, I saw an ad for water rights. Like, oh, I should go back to their website and subscribe. I did really like what I saw and I saw their ad. That kind of logic. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know about you guys, but when you shop online, could be for anything. Me, it's, I guess you could say coffee mugs. I'm always looking at coffee mugs because I love coffee. And you search in your browser, oh, I'm looking for a brand new coffee mug by so-and-so. Oftentimes, and this is really cool, you'll hop onto, say, Facebook and you're ready to chat with your friends and you see an ad for the same exact coffee mug that you were looking at literally 10 seconds ago. And that is just the beauty of Google, but also Facebook. And I know we're kind of getting more into the marketing as opposed to websites, so I don't want to go too far off. But those are the kinds of things that you would want implemented on your social platforms so you can bring people back to your brand each time. But those would be the things that I would look for, Dawn, is the reach and the impression. So how many people have you reached, even if you ran your ad for a week, or maybe you're running your ad for a month, but how many people you're reaching overall, I just feel like is super important, because even if they're not interacting with you, they're gonna remember you because they already saw you.
Good. That's what I tell my clients.
Yes. Let me see. I do believe we had a couple more chats. Oh, it's from our wonderful Blue Tech Valley Innovation Cluster team. But does anyone else have any additional questions at all? I know it's about 10:47, so we're kind of about 15 minutes into the questionnaire portion of this. But if no one has any additional questions, Ben, I'm gonna toss the ball back to you, and make sure to jot down my email here. If you have any questions after this webinar, I'm here as a resource to you, but Ben, take it away.
Sure. Thank you everyone for attending today, and Alexis, great work. They can just shoot you an email there if they have any questions. Alexis Ford at mail.fresnostate.edu. Don't forget it's .edu, not .com. Every once in a while. Send us your feedback on today. So shoot me an email or Alexis. My email is bfrancis, B-F-R-A-N-C-I-S at mail.fresnostate.edu for those of you who don't have it. Let us know what other subjects you'd like to see. Give us some feedback on today. Again, just keep checking your email. We'll be sending some webinars coming up, some more content we're going to be shooting for Friday at 10. So just keep that penciled in. So with all that said, thank you all for attending today, and we'll see you next week.